Welcome back to the Life Be Lifing podcast. I am your host, Coach Emery Cannon, and today, starting out Black History, I have Educator, I have the author, I have the St. Louis known Florence Chambers. Welcome. Thank you for coming in today, Miss Chambers.
Thank you for having me.
So today, I wanted to start out Black History by having an historian tell us a little bit about Black history in St. Louis. And who better to tell us more and give us a better insight about Black history than an educator that was in the St. Louis education system for over 40 years. She's retired. She has a book out now. It's called A Time to Remember. And can you tell us a little bit about the book before we get started with the Black history education?
Well, that all threads in together because actually the reason I wrote the book was to give a little historical background of how I lived and how I came to be an educator so that I'm a self-proclaimed historian, but that's because I lived and was raised up in a time when history was being made right here in the city of St. Louis. Many of the changes that took place back in the 60s and 70s have had a great impact upon the city and the people that live within it. And being an educator just made it even better. My years as an educator are so very, very warm experiences for me to look back on. They're part of these memoirs that I wrote, A Time to Remember. But it was basically for the historical background and for my family to know their roots.
And I know that's very important to you is for being an educator is for people to know where something came from. That's, part of education, especially for a historian. Can you tell us a little bit about what was your biggest impact growing up in those times back then that really made you decide that you wanted to help out the community by educating the community? What was like one thing that you could really think of that really put that in place for you?
There were a lot of great impacts. I came up at such a good time to be in a neighborhood community. Our community was just wonderful. Though we were considered maybe a poor neighborhood, but we were rich in the fact that we were a family. Uh, Everybody's mother knew everybody else's mother. We had places to go as young people to learn, and there was always someone supervising us. So we went to the playground and the recreation center. There were paid city employees that were our supervisors, and they were in charge of what we learned there. They also took a very personal interest in our lives. They knew our parents and they watched over us. So we grew up with all these watchful eyes. The church, the playground, the school was 3 doors from my house. It was a community that was rich, in fact, in knowledge and the impact it had on the children that were growing up.
Okay. And I wish we had those. I hope we still do have some, but I wish we still had that same kind of communities where people look out for each other. I can remember back when I was young, my neighbors always looked out for me. And I don't see that anymore out in the neighborhoods. And we as a community, we should always, it always takes a village to raise. And that's something I learned a long time ago. And we don't have those villages anymore. And it doesn't have to be the neighbor next door, but it could be like a cousin, an aunt. And my family was very tight knitted like that when I was growing up. So I always knew all my aunts, and you had to show all the respect. A little different now growing up because I think parents want to be more like friends than actual parents. And so can we dig a little bit more into how your upbringing? What was your foundation? I'm sure that's important to you.
Well, I remember a lot, but when I was writing my memoirs, and this is really most of the history of my growing up, but I'm looking here where I was talking about ours was a good neighborhood to grow up in. But most of the families were large like mine, most much larger. And poverty was one of the biggest family issues. What other people look at as poverty is that we probably struggle to have more capitalistic, materialistic things in the home, but we were rich in morals and character and learning from each other. And your siblings were known as your first friends, and then it just spread it out through the neighborhood. And everybody's family knew the other families. Even now, 7+ decades later, I consider those people an extended part of my family. And we support each other when we can with family gatherings and funerals, of course. Unfortunately, we have to support each other with that. But we see each other and they consider themselves family, and I consider them family. Now, in my household, we were blessed in that my father came out of World War II, another historical point, and he and his brother settled here in St. Louis, where he became one of the first African Americans to work at Laclede Gas, now known as Fire. So we had a working parent, and then my mother, she went out and did day work to help with the household finances. So we never went hungry. We probably didn't have a lot of toys at Christmas. We weren't taught those kind of principles. We were taught to stick together as siblings. We were taught to look out for one another, to give, to help when we could. We were taught a lot of values that have stuck with me, that I have lived by, and that I try to impart to my son and his children and the children that I work with in the St. Louis Public Schools. So it was a very rich neighborhood in that vein. I still talk with some of the friends and so forth that I grew up with, and they feel the same way that I do about how we grew up.
Now, what thinking back into Black history, a lot of people think about struggle and poverty for Black people, but as you stated, you were rich because you were rich in environment. You was rich in people, and to me that is a part of success. What would you say was one instance that you could think of that you knew that maybe segregation was there, but you overcame it?
Well, it was very difficult to even think that we overcame it in those days because it went on for years, even past the lawmaking that took place and the signatures that went on the dotted line. Institutionalized things like that continue on, and so you just make yourself as successful as you can, which is what we passed off to other African Americans in this struggle. And in our neighborhood, we learned so much about how to progress and how to be industrious and how to make use of your time that we just didn't lollygag and sit around and not do. We all felt that we should be productive. When you went to the recreation center, we were making crafts and doing things. We were involved in the shows. We
Yes.
put on Christmas shows, and we were always involved with the leaders on studying our parts. When we went to church, we were up in Christmas programs and Easter programs. You had to learn all of that by heart. I remember being at church on Sunday all day long, and
Yes.
they taught me that I needed to be able to learn how to speak. Even when I was a very young person, I can remember, when I was real young, sitting there with my mother, and I heard the lady say, "We're going to have Florence come up and explain what went on in Sunday school this morning." And I started looking like, wait a minute. But then I knew my mother expected me to do and I went up there and I had a very good experience with it. And she, the Sunday school director, a lady named Mrs. Wood, said I will never forget. She also was an educator, but they took that seriously, that they were teaching us to take over for the time when they wouldn't be there. And that's what I always feel youth should be taught to do the things that the adults are now doing that they won't be here to do in the future. They must be taught, they must be trained, they must see you as a leader, and they must be taught to be industrious. These are my most important points that I like to leave.
That is very, very important. And a lot of people think that everything stops with them when they're gone, and it doesn't. So you bring up very valid points that you must teach those behind you how to survive and be successful moving forward. I hear a lot of parents talking about they teach their kids how to survive, and I would like to think that I was teaching my kids how to be successful when they were growing up, and not just to survive, because surviving is, to me, is not a way to live, but living in success or striving for success, you get to enjoy some of the fruits that you plant earlier in life. So tell us a little bit about teaching. How, this is because you did a few different jobs as teaching. You was a teacher for a long time, and what schools did you teach at?
I taught in St. Louis City my entire actually teaching career, and it was I attended Harris Teachers College, and we were expected to go out and work in the schools, and
Was Harris Stowe State College?
it has become that now. At that time when I was going there, it was Harris Teachers
Now,
College.
is that a HBCU school?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
At
right.
this time, it is, and I was always the teacher in my family. I can remember sitting outside on the front porch, and some of the, you had to learn how to find things that you could do to fill up the time. So I remember being the spelling teacher with a ruler. I guess I was sort of emulating someone I had seen like that. You had to get the word correct, or else I might threaten to take the little ruler and get your little knuckles or something like that. So that friends have told me that's what I was doing, and my family reminds me that I was teaching the spelling even as a young girl over there. But I enjoyed being a young girl growing up in that neighborhood because I participated in all of the things that were going on in the neighborhood, at the rec center, on the playground, in the church. I like participating, I like doing, I like being a part of, and that rounded off my personality. Now the teaching I loved. So, giving you that background to let you bring you up to speed on why I chose teaching. At the time when we were going to school, we had opportunities to work in other places while we were finishing college. And I had a few nice opportunities. I worked at the post office, the record center, the library. And even when I was working at the library, they were saying, as soon as you graduate, we've got a good job for you here. And
Hmm.
I was thinking, no, I had always wanted to teach. And from that moment on, when I graduated, I was the most excited person to enter a classroom, and I was the teacher. It was the most exciting experience that I've ever had in my life. And I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed teaching for the St. Louis Public Schools. I enjoyed my interaction with students and parents. We embraced those people like they were our family. And we taught the children as if, we knew their lives depended on it, which it did, of what they learned through us. And I just remember all of the programs and the where we taught outside of the curriculum, where we taught inside of the curriculum, and felt so rewarded when our students went on and did things with their lives. So it was meant for me, I believe. I have no regrets about having spent time as a public school teacher. The money, it wasn't what other people in industries were making, but it was so rewarding. And we had such wonderful times in our schools. Our schools were like our second families away from home. They really were.
That is wonderful. So, did you teach the entire time, or did you progress to maybe a counselor, or what? What? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, my story continues. It does. I taught a number of years and enjoyed it. And then I started seeing there were other opportunities that might where I could spread my wings and help a little bit more. So I started going to school to become a school counselor. And I went on and finished my career in St. Louis City as a school counselor. So I did about 23 years as a teacher,
Wow.
language arts,
How
creative
many
writing.
students is that? That has got to be a lot, thousands and thousands of students that
Um,
you have made your footprint on, and they have moved on in the world and gotten into their careers, and they took a part of you with them. That's amazing. Kudos to you, Miss Chambers. Kudos to you.
Thank you. I'm very proud of that. That's something I'm very proud of. And after becoming a counselor, I was very happy with that position. And I actually, in receiving the counseling degree here in St. Louis at the University of Missouri, I received another certificate along with that, which was a psychological examiner. So after retiring with 30 plus years with the St. Louis Public Schools, I decided to use that certificate and went to another school district and worked as a psychological examiner. So I actually got to use all parts of the education that I received. And that's probably what I wanted to do. There is no sense in having something and you don't use it. And I even then went back to my alma mater, Harris Teachers College, and became an adjunct professor there and also at the St. Louis Community College before finally starting to help with my grandchildren. I had already retired. Then I retired from everything. And as I said earlier, every one of those jobs, every one of those hats I wore was exciting to me. I enjoyed it. I feel like I gave myself in the right place. I have no regrets.
And so after that, you decided to write a book. And now, what got you into writing? Were you like a language teacher or a writing teacher, or did you go like on any expeditions outside of St. Louis with writing? Tell us a little bit about your journey. I mean, this is good stuff here.
Well, I thank you for asking. I did have an opportunity during my teaching career where I was asked to be a creative writing teacher. And though I like to write, I had written stories in high school that some people told me, "Oh, you're going to be a great writer." But I enjoyed writing stories, and I enjoy reading. I'm an avid reader, so that's one of my hobbies. But the thing about it was, I like to be good at everything I was doing. So I found out about a class they were offering called Gateway Writing, and that was being taught over at. Well, I started with a summer seminar that went 8 weeks, 8 hours a day, and I connected with some people that made my life richer because with through that group we joined up with the National Writing uh, Group, and we were able to travel and take our learning and our teaching from this creative writing class to other cities where we interacted with other teachers who were doing something similar, not all the same way, so that we just met and networked. And I was able to attend seminars at Princeton where we all came together. 2 weeks there. We went to Tufts University in Boston, shared there. We went to
Wow.
Houston and shared with teachers there, but that was with the National Writing Project. So these things helped me to encourage other people to write better as we were working with the creative writing classes here in St. Louis. So, yes, I did have some exciting adventures while working as well. These also enhanced my career. And again, I feel I just had a wonderful career. There are no regrets.
It sounds like an amazing career. And in a time back then where Black history was, even the name Black history was just starting to get a buzz to have its own month. As short as it may be, they gave us a month where we can celebrate Black leaders and Black historians and even current one and present ones. That's something to be said about that. And so, my biggest question to you right now is, if you look at all the people and everything that Black people have done for not only the United States but all over the world, which one is your biggest influence? Which Black historian is your biggest influence?
Well, I we did so much in the schools imparting this type of knowledge to the children because I remember growing up and no one taught me anything. I had to go walking up to the Bar Branch Library every day, and that's when I finally started seeing little books with Black people's pictures on them, and I was thrilled. So I became an avid reader because that, just inspired me. So during my tenure as a teacher, what we did use that month. It was given to us. We did present. If you could have seen those schools in back when we were working and we were celebrating, you would not believe the skills of these teachers in St. Louis, Missouri. We would have the hallways filled with African Americans,
Oh my
pictures, and
God.
what they had done. And not just athletes, musicians, educators, historians, politicians. We always prepared for a great big program, which to culminate that month, and all the parents would come, and it was an exciting time because we made sure most of the students who wanted to be involved were involved, and every classroom participated. It was always something exciting about that month and coming up to it. And even when I moved south, where there were more diverse communities, we had an outstanding educator in that building who included all the students. And I can remember one of the programs where the students came in, each carrying the flag from their country. And you talk about proud, and she did an outstanding job. I will never forget her. Joyce Atkins doing an outstanding job as the director of what we called over there the multicultural program. We didn't call it the Black History program over there. So we included the Black history, and we also included history from the countries of the students we were teaching in that neighborhood, and they were from
So like a
other
melting
places. A
pot of
melting
history.
pot. It was just an interesting career that I had with St. Louis Public Schools. I don't know if they're having that type of impact anymore because I talk with some of the teachers, but I know that their hearts are there, and maybe the times have changed, but most teachers are dedicated to their craft, and that's something that comes from within. It's a passion you have. It's not something that I think you craft it, but if you have some passion inside, it makes it an easy job. So I can even say my job was easy. I was very passionate about it. I loved it. And I could come up with creative juices because of it and what I wanted the students to learn about me and about life. It was all very interesting.
Wow. It sounds like such an illustrious career, and you enjoyed it, and you never work a day if you love what you do. And I feel like that's what you're telling us. And you were a part of something really big with the St. Louis Board of Education then, and you made such an impact uh, with those students and with even the people you worked with. All the stories I hear about you are well respected, highly considered on everything. So we really, really thank you for coming in today and tell us a little bit more about your book before you go.
Oh, my book was basically written after retirement, and it was basically written for my family. So that they understood somewhat of my history being one of the matriarchs of the family. And it was dedicated to my mom, who lit my torch, and to my big hearted son, Emery, who inspired me to keep it lit. So that would tell you what I was trying to do was just impart some of the information of the times. And I was feeling that 100 years from now, when I'm no longer here, this information may help someone. Maybe another little girl will have an experience like mine, or read this book, and maybe find out what was happening in these particular times and what people were doing. And so, being a self-proclaimed historian, I always know that when you put something down, I remember when writing this book, I wasn't trying to get rich or anything, and I told my son anybody can write a book. And he said, but everybody does it. So that's how I leave that, is that at the time I had all that information in me and I wanted to get it down. And I know that everyone does. And I kept trying to encourage people um, to tell their stories, because you have a story and you can tell it. And they even have ghostwriters if you don't want to be the writer yourself. But I wanted to be the writer, and I never expected to become any kind of great uh, writer or anything. I just wanted to impart that information and leave it here for my family and for anyone else that wants to know what happened and how were people living in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I covered all that in the book.
And this book is available on Amazon, where you can find it either under her name or by the name. And here it is again, right there. Please go out and support Black authors, as it is Black History Month. Black authors do matter, and we really appreciate you tuning in. Before we go, though, I want to let everybody know that this was one of the most delightful and interviews I've ever done, because I've never had a chance or opportunity to interview my mother. And she was one of my biggest inspirations when writing my book. Her book inspired me, because if there's anybody you want to be like, you should always try to emulate them in the best way possible. She has taught me everything I know up to this point, and I really appreciate her. And thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for having me. And thank you for giving us all this knowledge on here on the first day of Black History. We hope you tune in again next week. But until then, bye for now. Thank
Th-
you again.
Thank you. I was very, very honored to be here. Bye for now.